Hello, welcome to Cowboy Red. Nottingham Forest head back to Selhurst Park on Saturday evening after their party in London in May. They finished in a draw on the final day of last season as we discuss whether Forest can match or better that this weekend against Crystal Palace in the company of, first of all, Reds fan Michael Temps. Have you finished your mouthful there? Are you ready to talk?
Yeah, so I finished eating. I've already bored these boys in my daughter's bedroom, surrounded by Pepper and George. Can't find my headphones. I'm a shambles, man.
Well, I've shaved my beard off because I saw on Twitter someone said this podcast is hosted by a homeless person in a very vitriolic tweet from someone who still follows me. Homeless vicar. No, I don't think he thinks I'm a vicar. I think he thinks I'm something else. He had words for all of us, except for Arsher because he's too new, but I think he might have had some for you as well. Arsher after a couple of weeks. Arsher Ali is back with us. Arsher, you've been busy doing some good work, and we were discussing interesting about how you learn lines. So that's why we were 3 minutes late, so apologies for that. But you've had a busy morning. Are you well?
I am well, guys. Thank you. Let's get on with this.
Yes, we'll crack on because you've got to get back to work shortly. So, Palace away, like we said, 1-1 last season. They're always one of those very decent sides. How are you seeing this one, Temps?
What a day that was last year. Still high from that, I think. Yeah, we'll get into this. Great time to play them. Missing so many attacking threats. Been there or thereabouts for a long time. Just listening to your chat with Seb in my car yesterday, and he's right, isn't he? They've become a bit of a fixture of solidity without ever really troubling the top 10 and never seemingly looking like they're going to get relegated, but they do hold themselves to a standard. And when Patrick Vieira fell short, they were more than happy to swing the axe and get Roy Hodgson in. I think the hallmark of a Roy Hodgson team is that, isn't it? It's unspectacular but solid, well organised, well drilled, and we have to aspire to get past Crystal Palace both this weekend and in the medium term.
Yeah, I agree. Attempts mentions that Seb Hutchison interview that we did yesterday. It's 40 minutes long. It's really interesting to get a neutral perspective. Obviously, we see this through a very Forest-centric lens, but he has some interesting thoughts about where we are as a club and the direction that we're going. Arsha, how do you feel about it? I said to Temps before we started recording, just before you joined us, if you go to Palace and you can see 2 goals, I feel like you're probably a bit disappointed because they don't have a huge attacking threat. But then, like Temp says, they're very resilient down the spine of the team as well. They're very hard to beat, aren't they?
Yeah, but also they're, like Temp says, they're solid, unspectacular. But this is still an away game, and we're still in the beginnings of improving our away performances. I saw a stat as well that Palace haven't actually beaten. This is one of those stats that, like, even saying it now, I want to punch myself, because when you hear stuff like this on Sky Sports, when the commentator decides to say this kind of a stat, it's normally the kiss of death. But Palace have never beaten Forest in the Premier League era. So there's something in that, and obviously, last year it was a party, and one of the best chants of the season came out of it. Great, repurposing of Shakira, but I mean that is it, isn't it? That they, even though they're missing Eze and they're missing Elise and Hudson Edouard, they're still, that defense is still solid. That is a really solid defense, and they have been together for ages. I mean, 3 out of that 4 you'd have them at our club. You'd have Tyreek Mitchell, you'd have Mark Gay, you'd have Joachim Andersen, of course you would. And then behind them, they've got, again, a solid goalkeeper, solid if unspectacular goalkeeper in Sam Johnston. And we won't mention the other bloke. But I think it will, even though it seems on paper, just like we said last week as well against Brentford, on paper with all the injuries, you feel like it's an easier task. But I just don't feel that that's appropriate and applicable, because they are, like Brentford, a team that are much further along the line than us in terms of their development. I mean, I saw a stat as well that I wasn't surprised by this, because I thought, yeah, of course, but Palace have only used 18 players so far this season, and we've used like 25. So that's a difference of 7 players or whatever, but that's big. We've still got players that we're trying to bring in. I know we'll go on to talk about, potentially the goalkeeper situation, etc. But we're still trying to bring players in and trying to bed them in. But when you have performances like Maria's performance against Brentford, it kind of makes you think, oh, well, that's one you've ticked off. He looks like he might settle, and Sangare is starting to settle. But, I think it will be trickier than we expect. But hopefully you're looking at a Forest win, a very narrow Forest win, if not a draw.
You can name that back five, Temps, and Decore in front of them is a good sitting midfielder. So even if they are lacking goals, would you take a draw now, or do you go there with the ambition and belief to win the game, which will lead into our formation and tactics, the personnel discussion, I think. Oh, you're muted. How are you muted?
No, I'm looking to win, hence the back four when we get to the teams. But yeah, you mentioned some good players there, some weak links as well. Whoever comes in for Eze won't match his level. Will Hughes, Derby bias aside, is not a central midfielder that should be, instilling fear into anybody in our group. I'd probably put Schlupp in that same bracket as well. I do like Jordan Ayew. I think he's the better of the brothers. But yeah, defensive solidity is what they're known for. They beat Manchester United in a really efficient manner. Didn't have much of the ball at all and dealt with it really well. But so disrupted by injury, suspension, and having to pick a needs-must team at a point where we've got so many different combinations and players to choose from. So we have to go with an attacking mindset. For me, I don't want this to become as simple as wingers at home, no wingers away, shut up shop, be hard to beat. I said before, I saw this run of fixtures as a trio of winnable games, and I still well and truly believe that we can be a front foot side away at Selhurst Park.
We'll get into our formations and selections then. Let's say Palace are 9th, 11 points from 7 games. They do have injuries, as we've kind of touched on. Obviously, Wolf Zaha's left the club. Michael Elise is injured. Eberici Eze, who's their star man, he's injured. And also Edouard, as Arsha said, is also out. So that's basically all their forwards are missing.
There's also a doubt over Jefferson Lerma as well, I think, who's a player I like. I know, he's very solid. He's been very solid for Bournemouth. But yeah, like Tem says, that midfield that they're probably going to go with is probably going to be, William from Derby, Jairo Riedewald, and Czech Decore, who, we were trying to sign as well. He's such a good, I think he was their player of the season, if I'm not wrong. So, when we get into the teams, you'll see. But when you see a possible midfield trio or two out of that lot, you think you'd back us, surely.
Yeah, true. Let's put our teams up. We'll start with Temps. There's a few, obviously, injury question marks. Nicholas Dominguez is kind of in and out of a few of these teams we haven't heard yet. Steve Cooper should be doing his press in the next hour, but we do know Steve Cooper's injury updates and what transpires on the pitch. I don't often tally, so we'll have to just wait and see till Saturday, I think. Let's put Temps' team up. I'll read it out for those who are listening, not watching. It's probably not exactly how he wanted it to look from his very scribbled out notes he sent me on WhatsApp, but this is how the graphic producer has turned it out. So it's Matt Turner in goal, back four, Aurier, Bolly, Murillo, and Harry Toffolo. Sangaré, I should say. Guy Mouchy says Sangaré, so perhaps it is. As a French speaker, Sangaré, I'll have to check that. Sitting in front of a back four, and then Mangala and Dominguez in midfield, with a pretty flat-looking midfield of Elanga and Gibbs-White in behind Awonyi. Is that how you want it to look, Temps? Just give us your general thoughts, so I pick a few names out.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I think you've done a really decent job in Microsoft Paint. I'm still back in the goalie. I think that you're right. There will be voices from within the club that are probably seeing Lakodimos's day coming soon. Turner, though, for me, does not deserve the drop at this point. I think we should continue to back him. Murillo did enough for me to keep his place. I think this is obviously the biggest debating point, the 4 versus the 5 and the personnel at centre half, that I'm advocating for trying to keep a relatively settled side there. We don't quite know what's going off with the injury to Ola Reyna. I thought Toffolo was impressive when he came on and deserves some backing. The midfield blend here, I've got Sangaré screening. I didn't want to drop Dominguez. I thought he was excellent at the weekend, but it was a hindsight mistake to leave out Morgan Gibbs-White. He has to come back in. That's not where I was advocating him from being last week. I was saying we should play him in that luxury spot just behind the 9, give him the freedom, give him the minders, give him the runners. But I don't see a means of getting the balance correct in centre mid without Morgan Gibbs-White being a bit of a make weight and playing off the left, but drifting around as he does and getting on the ball. For some fair comments about the coin flip call between Elanga and Callum Hudson-Odoi, but I think Mangala did enough to keep his place, and Taiwo is absolutely inked in any time that he's fit. So lots of potential changes to this, but this is the team I'm going with. I think it gets the right blend between defensive solidity and dynamism going forward, and really excited to see that blend of Sangare, Dominguez and Gibbs-White combining. I think those three could become a real important access if we can find a way to get them all on the pitch at the same time.
Just before I ask you a few questions around names, I should say, I think Sunday is the deadline for voting in the Football Content Awards. Obviously, we're up for 2, Best Premier League Podcast, Best Premier League Content Creator. If you haven't and you would be willing to vote for us, that'd be great. It's footballcontentawards.com/voting. Any support very much appreciated. Let's ask you about a couple of names there, Temps. I mean, you've got Turner in goal. Is that 60-40, 50-50? What if you were, how close would you be to putting Lacodimos in?
At some point in the next 3 weeks, Turner's going to get dropped and this guy's going to get a go. I just think that when we do that, it can't be a flip-flop. If a player is coming in to challenge our current first choice keeper, then the dropping needs to be justified and he needs to be given a run of 3-4 games plus for me. I just don't think Turner has quite done enough wrong. I'm saying this blind. I've never seen Lacodimos play football. So I might flip-flop myself in 3-4 weeks' time when he's had 3 worldies and kept a couple of clean sheets. But I'm still backing Turner for now. But I do feel there's a time coming in the next 2 to 3 matches where we're going to see the big Greek lad get a go.
I'll ask. There's another player I'll ask Arsher about. Somebody wants to talk about him, so I'll come to that. Just on Gibbs-White. You'd be comfortable with him playing sort of. He's not a left winger. He's playing off the left, drifting in, which would probably put an emphasis on Toffolo to get forwards more, I guess. Yeah,
he's done this before, and it was me advocating last week to find an out and out left winger to accommodate Morgan Gibbs-White at number 10. I think there's a subtle attacking twist as well in having point down in centre mid, i.e. 1 CDM rather than 2. And allowing more freedom to Mangala and Dominguez. Maybe Dominguez can play off the left and can still impact games. I'm not sure. I need to see him more. But yeah, this is how I've accommodated Morgan Gibbs-White. Toffolo, great ball for the cross, for the goal for Dominguez. Very willing runner. I think you made the point, Matt, of him being a consistent 7.5 out of 10. Unspectacular, but rock solid defensively as well. Doesn't abandon his post. Seems structured and organised. He won't play when Aina is fit. There may yet still be a way of accommodating another player at left back. But I think if Harry Toffolo is going to start a game, it's this one, having made a positive impact from the bench.
Yeah,
I mean that just going on your lineup there, accommodating Gibbs-White on the left. That's not a bad thing, because if you look at all of our attacks so far this season, we're doing exactly what we did last season. We're favouring the right. And that's not, that's eye test and stats as well that are showing that we are favouring the right wing in our attacks. So I don't dislike that. I think Gibbs-White, if we're doing that on the other side, I think, Gibbs-White on the left, drifting in, and sort of edge of the box, that could work. But I'm not, in mine, obviously, like if I was doing a version of that, I think I would possibly swap Elanga for Callum Hudson-Odoi if he was comfortable on the right.
We'll come to Arsher's shortly, I should say, as well. If there's almost 300 of you with us, which is great, do like and subscribe. It helps. So yeah, put a like on the stream now if you could. And we've had lots of iTunes reviews last week, which are good. I've read all of them, so thank you very much for that. Let's have a look at Arsher's team, and again, I'll read it out for those of you who are listening on iTunes or Spotify and other platforms. Arsher has got Lacodimos in goal, Aurier, Bolly, Murillo, and Toffolo across the back 4, and then Sangare and Mangala with Gibbs-White in advance of them, Hudson-Odoi and Elanga wide either side of Awoniyi. So it's sort of a 4-3-3, Arsher, I guess you're going to say. How would you sum it up, and what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, where do you want to start? There's a few bombs in there. not least the man marked in yellow. But we'll save that for a bit further along. Yeah, I mean, you've got. I think I had Alanga and Hudson-Odoi switched around, obviously, in mind, because Alanga's always seeming to be on the right. So I would have that way that switched over. I don't think it's going to. We're not going to see a back three. I'd be massively shocked, and we haven't even sort of mentioned it. That's how much it's kind of off the thinker. I don't think we're going to go back three. But I guess the one thing I did actually get vaguely right last week against Brentford was the matchup, and I think that's another way of going here, because Palace, they do sort of tend to play in this kind of a 4-2-3-1 / 4-3-3 becomes 4-5-1, loads of phone numbers again. So I think matching up again, for me, I feel comfortable with that, because we're not, we still haven't quite figured out what we are as a team. And I feel like when you're in that kind of, germination period or whatever, especially before this international break, where, hopefully he gets, whoever's left, he gets to kind of work with a bit. But in this kind of period, it feels to me that a matchup again feels right. And I'm not particularly comfortable, especially against a team, who, like we said earlier, you want to be up there and competing with and possibly beating. I don't feel comfortable with going, as simple, like we've said, as simple as back three away, four at the back at home, and that's it. There's no in between. But what I will say with this one, and just to go back as well, I'm pretty sure it's Sangare, because like someone's mentioned in the comments, and like I thought as well, there is an accent on the E at the end, I think. I'm going to stick with Sangare because I enjoy saying it, Sangare. So, I mean, obviously this team, I know a lot of people are kicking off in the comments about Dominguez. I'm assuming this team is without Dominguez. If Dominguez is fit, then it's another conversation to have, and quite an awkward one. But let's start with Toffolo. We'll get on to Vlachodimos later. But Toffolo, there were groans when he got up to come on. Don't lie, everyone. You all felt it. You all had that groan inside. Why is he bringing on Toffolo? And then he comes on, and along with Gibbs White, he changes the game. I think it was Steve Cooper who was saying that he's one of the best crossers in the team, and he's been solid for it. He's been quite solid, at left back for us. So I'm comfortable with putting him in, especially with Palace's injuries. But also another thing to note with Palace is losing players like Zaha and Elise and Eze. They've lost that kind of 1v1 dribbling ability. It seems to have disappeared. Like Schlupp isn't that guy. Ayew isn't really that guy. They're not two players. Maybe Ayew a little bit, but they're not two players that I feel like, we're going to have a lot of trouble with them in behind. I don't think that's an issue, especially not with Zaha and Elise. So I feel comfortable with that back four. I thought Maria was very good. Obviously, Aurier, we feel great about him at right back. Bolly, Sangare. I'm surprised you didn't talk about this on Monday, but it feels like it's the most peak Forest thing that's happened in a while. So here we've spent nearly 2 years trying to chase this midfield destroyer, this defensive general that we thought.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
We sign him, and then he's like literally playing off the one against Brentford. He was so far forward; it was great. He was winning the ball quite high up, but it was a shock, and especially because we knew that Gibbs White was out. But it was a shock to basically see him right up there, so advanced as basically an attacking midfielder. So that just made me chuckle in the stands. So I just thought that's just peak Forest, isn't it? Mangala, great. And Gibbs White, I was really impressed with how his attitude of coming off the bench. Like, he was really fired up, wasn't he? And if he can add that kind of defensive aspect to his game, then he might end up being a bit more of an all-round midfielder than we think. So that one is a tricky one in terms of if Dominguez is fit, what do you do with Gibbs White? And then that's where I kind of lean towards more towards Temps's starting 11, I'd have possibly Gibbs White instead of Hudson-Odoi. Oh, sorry, instead of Elanga, and have Hudson-Odoi over the other side. The thing with Elanga is he's very, I know I've been talking for ages, he's very raw still, we know that. But for me, he just needs to, it's that kind of, he'll get it, because being around Steve Cooper, I think he will fully believe in his own ability, but he just needs to be he can afford to be a bit more sure of himself. The thing I want to see him stop doing is I want him to stop stopping. Like when he gets played in, he has the pace to destroy most, but for some reason there seems to be a bit of a disconnect. So we'll play him in, he looks like he's absolutely eaten the left back or whatever, and then he stops, and then there's that stuttering, and then there's that trying to 1v1 dribble. And I think he needs to back himself. I think with his pace, the end product will come, but I think with his pace he can afford to back himself a bit more. And then Taiwo obviously is Taiwo. Yeah,
I mean, Hickey was on a yellow card after 70 seconds. I don't think we saw him take him on again after that. He does stumble over the ball a bit. He tries to stand up a fullback and then, just run. I mean, you've got that raw attribute. We'll come on to my team, actually, because it follows up on that, and it does not feature Elanga for the reason because I think he's better off the bench at this stage. Once again, I'll read mine out and give my thoughts on it. So Vlachodimos in goal, I'll come on to him. And extend that discussion.
Both dropping the keeper. Look at him, brutal.
Well, hang on. I'll elaborate on that. Vlachodimos in goal. Aurier, Bolly, Murillo, and Ola Aina, if fit, at the left back. Sangare, Mangala, Dominguez, if fit, in midfield. Hudson-Odoi, Gibbs White, and Awoniyi, with Gibbs White, as Temp says, sort of off the left, playing in that central role. So I'll just give some quick thoughts on that. I mean, Vlachodimos, like Temp said, he's going to be in the team in the next 3 weeks. I'm kind of at the stage of, if you think he's the best goalie, you might as well pick him. The worry is if he comes in and has a mare, then you've got to go cap in hand back to Turner and hope he's like mentally right. But that's a real coin toss for me. Whatever they pick, you kind of back the decision. Aina at left back, if he's fit again, I mean, Toffolo was really good, but Aina was top notch in virtually every game before him. And I think, is Harry Toffolo going to play the remaining 31 games left or something like that? Probably not, but Ola Aina could, and if he's fit, I'd pick him. Midfield three kind of picks itself. If Dominguez is out, then it's Ryan Yates. If Ryan Yates is out, then it's Santos. And I'll ask Arsha about Santos. Surely somebody wants to talk about him. And then Hudson-Odoi playing from the right. Gibbs White, as we said, and as I said on Monday, I think he should have started. I think he just pick your best creative player, unless he's been playing terribly, and I don't think he has been. And then Awoniyi up front. What's we talking about? Talk to us about that midfield spot, Arsha. I didn't ask you about it. If Dominguez is out, would it be? Would Ryan Yates come in, or how would you work that midfield?
Yeah, this is a tricky one because I will say as well. Obviously, if Ola Aina is fit, he goes in instead of Toffolo easily. But I mean, I don't know what the deal is with Dominguez and Ryan. Isn't Ryan Yates injured as well?
Well, yeah, he missed the last game with injury, so he's a doubt as well, which takes us down to Santos. And I know you said you wanted to talk about him. So what's your take there? Are you not picking him at all, or
no? It's not. It's not that I'm not. Look, the thing with Santos is, I mean, there's not been a lot to be ticked off about. Let's keep it clean. With Forest these days, everything seems to be going, reasonably well. I'll touch some wood, but this Santos thing, I mean, it's becoming a bit of a sideshow, and Forest as a club recently, we're not the best in terms of the press. We get quite a bad rap in the press sometimes, and a lot of the time it's kind of schoolboy stuff that maybe we could kind of clean up and not have to have a bit of laundry in the kind of public eye. But this thing, this is a kind of sideshow that we don't really need and we don't kind of want really. And I don't like this kind of public pressure that seems to be coming, this kind of spin. It's it should be reserved for politicians this amount of spin. I don't like that a journalist like Fabrizio Romano is so influenced by an agent that he's about to, put pressure on a club so publicly. I mean, at the end of the day, I love that term, end of the day. It's such a cliche. But at the end of the day, if he was so good, why is he not at Chelsea still? Like, Chelsea could do with him more than we can. If you look at Chelsea now and how they're playing, they've got more room for someone like Andre Santos than us. It does feel like, and I know this has been floated around, that it was all about the timing and they weren't sure of whether they were going to get X player or, Y player. So it was a case of, let's get him in now. It's a good deal. It's a loan. It helps FFP, etc. That we're not having to put out a massive fee. But the thing is with all this as well, now it's because there was someone in The Athletic as well who put out a piece and then tried to backtrack in his tweets, of kind of, oh, look, this is a piece I've written, but I'm not blaming Forest, promise. And, no comments. You're not allowed to say anything on his tweet. But I just, the irony is that after all this tomfoolery, it probably feels like he's actually closer to the team than he has been in a while, especially if Yates is injured and Dominguez is out. So just do your research, like actually know what the situation is before you start doing this all in public.
I'll double down on this. We owe Andre Santos absolutely nothing. And if Chelsea or his management team or Fabrizio Romano so decides, let him go back. I don't necessarily think this has come from Santos himself, or they won't be happy. Most importantly of all, I don't think Steve Cooper gives it a second glance. He reads a line in the Mail saying Chelsea might recall Andre Santos. No problem. It's because he's so far down the depth chart to start a game for Forest that it's almost immaterial. So the politics of Twitter accounts with followings like Fabrizio's, or his agent rightly wanting to place him in the shop window to return and shine at Chelsea, or to be further loaned to other sides, or to be traded away, not our problem. Pick the best side. If that means Andre Santos getting driven back to London, no issue.
The other thing is as well, he is going to get a chance at some point, and he's just so talented. You probably back him to perform, and he might keep his place then. So just keep your head down. I said this on Monday. And I don't think it necessarily comes from him. It's just his agent. Busy agents are a pain in the arse, really. So yeah, get on with it, really. People say in the comments, I saw Derek say Turner does not deserve to be dropped. I agree, he doesn't deserve to be dropped, but there's an air of inevitability about Greece's number one goalkeeper signing for Nottingham Forest. He's not. I just don't think he's going to sit on the bench post January. So
I mean, this is not a Panagiotis Taxidis kind of situation here. Does anyone remember him? Do you remember him?
Yes. Yeah, signed for Olympiacos.
The guy who famously cried from the airport from Heathrow to Nottingham because he was so distraught at leaving Athens. This isn't that situation. We haven't brought this guy in to like have him sat on the bench, but also, in January we might, because he's not got into our team or whatever, he disappears into the night and disappears off to Serie A. This is not that situation. This is more, to me, this feels more like a kind of Andreas Bouchalakis, Apostolos Velios situation. They brought him in, and this is my own opinion, obviously. They want to see him in the starting 11. They want to see him given a chance. And it feels like, I know we've talked about this before, but it feels like there's an air of, you make one mistake, Matt Turner, and you're out, because we're looking for a reason to bring the order, the pecking order, back to what we think it should be. It might not be, Steve Cooper. I don't want to put any kind of inference on, interference, etc., blah, blah, blah. But it does feel like the timing of the signings has skewed the view of who is number one and who is number two. With him coming in so late and Turner obviously coming in earlier. But it just feels like you don't bring a player like that in with all of his experience compared to Matt Turner's experience. You don't bring a player like that and leave him on the bench. I feel like the showing against Brentford might have some kind of, people might have some kind of snap judgments over that. But for me, here's the thing with Matt Turner. He is currently filling an Eric Lehigh shaped hole in all of our hearts. Like with every passing interview, you just love him even more. Like his story, everything is kind of underdog story. Everything about him makes it so hard to say what I'm about to say. Like, he, for me, is not a number one goalkeeper. I can't see it. Yes, he is for the US national team, but then, you know, there's not a massive amount for them to pick from. But for me, and this isn't a snap judgment from Brentford, this is anyone who knows me, who I've, you know, text my kind of furious nonsense to about Forest. I've not been convinced by Turner from the beginning. There's just he feels like he is a goalkeeper from a different era. If he was a goalkeeper in the late 90s, early 2000s, my God, he would be Tottenham's number one. He'd probably be Blackburn's number one, whoever, you know, he would be that goalkeeper, because that's what you need. That's what you needed at that time. Now it feels like goalkeepers are asked to do so much stuff. You know, you're a modern goalkeeper now. You're not expected to be just rooted on your line, which Matt Turner, you know, if you watch him in the stand, I've been to quite a few games, if you watch him, he is someone who feels very comfortable standing on his line. He doesn't want to be coming out. He doesn't want to be closing down things. You know, he's looking to others to do that. That doesn't qualify as a kind of modern goalkeeper. His distribution isn't great. He's not comfortable with his feet. Those things don't count as a modern goalkeeper. Now, we're saying this, you know, Odysseus Vlachodimos, that's how you say his name. He's going to come in. We've seen him, you know, on YouTube. If you've seen any Benfica games, you've seen him. He, you know, he looks like a very solid shot stopper. He looks like someone who fills the goal with his kind of thank you, landscape photography. He looks like someone who just fills the goal. Whereas for me, and this is so awful that I'm about to say this, but Matt Turner looks like a kid who's been given a goalkeeper's shirt and gloves that are too big for him. There's just something that I don't feel comfortable with him in goal. I feel very comfortable with him being like a very capable number two, but I feel awful saying all these things. But I mean, he might come in like a Demos and just be, like you say, he might have a mare, and then what do we do? You know, his distribution. I don't know if anybody's seen his goal kick, his special goal kick that he kind of invented. I don't think he had the balls to actually use it in a game. I think he might have done it against Milan in a friendly. But if you see it, it's quite funny on YouTube if you can find it. He does this kind of goal kick where he scoops the ball up to the defender, and the defender heads it back, and he takes it in his arms and then launches like a crazy long throw out to the wing. Now, I saw that and I thought, oh, that's funny. But then I thought, hang on a second, does that mean that his distribution might be a bit off? Who knows? And then you read the scout reports like we all do. As soon as Forest signs someone, you read about a bazillion scout reports to see which one's actually right when you actually see the player. And distribution is something that's kind of been mentioned, but shot stopping and, you know, just having a presence and being that kind of modern goalkeeper, he seems like he's someone who has definitely got that tick. But, you know, YouTube, again, you watch him, he does feel like he might have a flap in him as well. But let's see. I think that they want to see him in. You don't bring Greek, you know, and he's not even the first Greek goalkeeper that we've had. Does anyone know the other two?
Stefanos.
Yes, one. Anyone else? He didn't actually play for Forest, but they're both Greek caps.
No,
anyway,
no.
Someone will get it.
Okay, Kapinos I remember was one because he didn't play, or Kapinos. I was just saying on Turner as well, like he wasn't signed as a number one. If he comes with stock like Anana coming to United, has a Rick, then he's going to get away with it. But there's always been that shadow over Turner, which is why I think he's a good goalie, but I think he's been drafted in as a number two. Let's just have a look. I did do a 3 at the back team, and then I'll get Temps's take on that. On the other side, I'll just read out. This is not the team I would play personally, but I've drawn up a 3 at the back because there is the possibility. So I put Turner in goal on this one. You know, coin toss, it could be anyone. Worrell, Bolly, Murillo. Obviously, Niakate suspended after his red card. Felipe doesn't look like he's playing anytime soon, so Joe would come in. Aurier and Aina as wing backs, although it could be Toffolo, of course, or Montiel. We've got about him. Nico Williams. I'd love to know if he's injured or not. I think he said something on Instagram that suggested he was, but he's really drifted out of the pecking order. Then a midfield 3: Sangare, Mangala, Dominguez, and Gibbs White in support of Awoniyi. That graphic's terrible. Sorry, this is looks like they're in a queue. Awoniyi, Gibbs White, and Dominguez. But you get the picture. That kind of 5-3-1-1 formation. Temps, would you absolutely hate that team, or can you see some merit in it?
Well, Turner's not available anymore because Arsher's called him a taxi, which I think is just taking him back down to Heathrow now. He's cleared his locker and he wants nothing to do with this team from your imaginary best friend.
Oh no, I feel awful. I
think if this kind of side would have half a chance of being selected if we still had, an elite right winger along the profile of Brennan Johnson, who could make this an asymmetrical, right side focused game plan. I just don't think we're going to abandon the quality that Elanga and or Hudson-Odoi and or Morgan Gibbs-White can give us in wider areas. So I think this would be a backward step. I think this would be a shape and a structure that we would have looked to have played last season, when an away point at Palace would have been celebrated far more than it is now as we look to raise expectation. One really good point Arsha made a couple of answers ago was about Sangare winning high turnovers. And I think that's a marker of the potential evolution of Forest. If, rather than retreating into banks of 4 and 5, we can try and counter press and regain possession in the final third, that's transformative in terms of our outlook as a club, the ambition that we set, and the way in which we set about attacking teams, particularly on the road. So I think that's a really positive way of deploying him. Dominguez was such a willing runner in the press at the weekend. And I think both of those players, the energy of those players and the skill set of those players is a further example of the evolution of Forest. This team is not about evolution. This is a hark back to last season when we were trying to be solid at the back and nick a point on the break. I don't think that's us now. I don't think we're going to use this shape. I don't think we're going to use these personnel.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. It wouldn't be my team. I think you could play it and you could go there. But I think you can be positive going to a team like Palace. This is a team I would recommend more against a top 6 team. I'll come back to Arsha now. A couple of people have got Dimi Konstantopoulos, who I believe is the keeper. Arsha, he got injured, didn't he?
Yeah, well done, Greg.
Yeah, a couple of people.
How good was Bouchalakis, by the way, for one game when he scored 2 worldies against Brentford? Promised the earth, and then completely faded.
Just on Worrell, obviously, we've advocated him playing. I wouldn't advocate him playing this weekend. I think we've struck a pairing with Bolly and Murillo. I think it's going to be difficult for Worrell to get back in this team if we're going to play a back 4 now. What do you think, Arsha? Is this the biggest challenge he's faced now to get regular games for Forest?
Yeah, I mean, he had his period out last season, didn't he? Where he had to win his place back, and he pretty much did win his place back. It's a tricky one, Again, it was one of those things that you could hear rumblings around you, and you could hear conversations, and people were like, "Oh, this is our first 11 where we haven't got a homegrown player, and it feels weird." Yeah. I don't know. I really like Joe Worrell. Like, I really genuinely like him, and I'm very happy with him in a 3. But I mean, do you stand in the way of progress? What do you do here? Like, for me, he's someone who puts his body on the line. He's very. Some of his kind of like Hail Marys come off quite nicely. And he's Forest through and through. It's such a heart v head one. This one, I don't really know what the answer is, but I don't know. You feel better with him at the club, but as someone's just put in the comments, there's no room for sentiment.
Yeah, but then equally, Greg says, at Chelsea, he was unbelievable, best performance of his career. Yeah. I thought he was fine against Burnley. Didn't think he did anything wrong to get dropped. And played really well at the end of last season. But then equally, you're not going to drop Bolly. You're not going to drop Murillo. You've got Felipe. You've got Niakate. There's so many good options now. I think it's just a case of if you've got the shirt and you're playing well, Temps, you probably have a right to expect to play, don't you?
Felipe is going to parachute back in at some point, and it looks like he's been training more and more this week. So I don't think he's necessarily needs to be introduced from the bench. I think with his level of experience and his poise, he could quite happily be dropped in relatively cold and start a game. So that's going to happen at some point. Niakate still worries me. Case in point, at the weekend, obviously the criticism of him internally is the decisions he makes in what the Forest coaches call extreme defending. So those periods where you're one-on-one on an island, or recovering, or having to make something that is, you know, out of the shape, out of the ordinary. The charge level that Moussa Niakhaté is, he makes rash choices in those kinds of pressure situations. And whatever your view on the nature of the contact that got him sent off at the weekend, it wasn't a bright decision to do that in front of the referee at that time. So Niakhaté, with a cool head, has all of the physical facets, all of the footballing facets to be an automatic selection in this team. But we'll find ourselves debating his inclusion because of that mindset. Joe's been accused of lack of pace at times, but reads the ball in behind very well. Willy Bolly, probably the opposite of that. He's an absolute monster, isn't he? Headers and tackles, backs against the wall, last 20 minutes, you'd back him every time. Is he particularly good when he gets turned? Murillo could be anything, couldn't he? He could be dropped or an ever-present for the rest of the season and a Brazil cap within 18 months. Who knows? We're blessed with options at centre-half. I think we're going to continue to make mistakes as we look to guess who's going to get the nod in any particular game. But the health of that battle and what they're going to be doing to each other in training. Cooper mentioned the kind of rise in intensity of on non-match days at the training ground. I think stands us in really good stead. I just hope a relatively settled two emerges from this. And I hope Felipe is part of it sooner rather than later, because he had such a steadying influence at the back end of last season.
Yeah, I mean, Felipe, if you're picking a first choice pairing, Felipe is number one on that list if fully fit. The second spot's up for grabs. I think
just on the sentiment thing. Sorry to interrupt. That is a reality. And if Joe and Yatesy and players like that are to become bench warmers in a meritocracy because we've gone out and signed players of demonstrable experience or skill, that is a part of the evolution. They have to raise their game and kick on again, and don't bet against them doing that, because Ryan Yates has already done that 3 times in his career.
Yeah, it's a good debate to be had, isn't it? I mean, I saw Dan in the comments saying Bolly's getting respect's our best defender. He's a great pure defender, but he's got faults. Like, he's not the quickest. He's not the best on the ball. He couldn't stay fit for 3 seasons. This is his longest run of fitness in a long time, which is why we're seeing that consistency out of him, why he definitely 100% deserves to be in the team at the moment. But each of the centre halves we've got has got issues, basically, which is probably why we need someone to stick their hand up and have that settled back 2, back 3. Because I think Arsher is important, isn't it? We can't spend forever chopping and changing the defence and midfield. We need to use these next 6 or 8 weeks, for me, where we've got decent fixtures to try and come up with a formula, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, to bring it back to Palace, who we're playing, look at them. That back 4 is so solid, and that's, you kind of know what you're getting from them, and then also that they're quite a strong defensive unit. I mean, we'll throw this stuff at the wall, and some of it will stick. And when it does, it's something that we don't have to talk about.
True. Right, we covered a lot of ground in 43 minutes or so. Just a few bits of admin to sweep up and some messages. Good luck to Lee Wood again. I think we mentioned that on Monday, but it's against Josh Warrington at the weekend in Sheffield. It's on at the same time. Well, he'll be fighting after the Forest match, so hopefully people get to see both. Forest women v Derby women on Sunday at the City Ground, 2 p.m. kickoff. We normally do a preview for that, so apologies that we haven't. Tickets from £6 and upwards, but do get down if you can, and do vote for us in the Football Content Awards. I won't push that again because I already have. Arsha, anything else from you before we let you go?
No, looking forward to the game, looking forward to watching it at home to get a different perspective. It's always nice.
Yeah, certainly is. Temps, anything from you?
Like Arsha says, Saturday's a day. If you're not lucky enough to have a ticket for Selhurst Park, get wedged on your settee, get Sky Sports on, and just flick through everything that's going off. I don't plan to move within 6 feet of my little corner of my settee where I choose to, commandeer and keep the kids out of it at all costs. That'll be me on Saturday.
Nice.
Is Mrs. Temple aware of this already in advance?
Well, I was going to say if she wasn't, she is now, but this is the last thing she listened to. So, yeah, she'll find out on Saturday.
True. Right. We'll leave it there. We're back on Monday. Actually, an unchanged lineup there because Temple and Arsher are with us again, and Fletcher's with us as well. So we'll review that game, and then international break. We'll have some content through that, no doubt. Hopefully, people can listen to that and enjoy it. Arsher, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Temps.
Cheers, fellas. See you soon.
Have a good few days. Enjoy the game, and we shall see you soon.